boobies?
Some
Bubbly?
shock value. Yeah, I love Bublé. Here in Canada, we call them Bublés. Michael Bublé. We don't actually. It's a bubbly. Real world example today?
You look like a race car driver. Sponsored by Stonies.
Sponsored by what?
Stonies?
I like to go fast and turn to the left.
Yeah.
No, this is the company that our good friend Ian Jones works for.
Yeah. You just visited him.
Aaron, should you choose to put this in the YouTube video? People can see that.
Probably will.
Probably will. Let's get into a real world example today, yeah?
Sure.
Sure, you're feeling spicy. Well, you know what? This is the Photographer Mindset Podcast, and our listeners like real, applicable stories, feedback. When bad things happen to us, maybe not even bad things, but challenging times happen to us, I think they'd like to hear how we navigate it so they don't have to deal with those problems. So we're going to do that today because you told me a story yesterday of some commercial work you're dealing with. Interesting scenario. We're going to keep names and we're going to change names, but this could be applicable across all industries. You had mentioned you were having maybe a contestable meeting over some deliverables today, and you told me that yesterday. We pressed record. I have no idea what happened in your meeting, but I can tell that you're practicing your stoicism, and I feel like when you go out of your way to do that, you're like trying to keep from stewing. So before we begin, this is the Photographer Mindset Podcast. I'm your co-host, Seth. This is Aaron. We're two photographers. We've been doing this podcast for about 4 years. We try to blend mindset principles with our photography practice. Whether you're interested in just getting better at the craft, whether you're interested in making money doing this full time, or whether you're interested in just making a little extra gravy on the side, I think we have all those bases covered. We try to talk about beginner, intermediate, and advanced techniques. I think mostly somewhere in the middle. And we use our life experiences to do so, which we're going to do today. So where should we start? You had mentioned to me yesterday that you had a meeting with a company. We'll say company throughout this because that will be applicable across any genre of work. Is that all right? Should we do that as you rub your eye and are annoyed with me?
I'll probably give away the type of company just based on the future conversation that you're about to hear.
That's fair, but then that's my caveat of saying I'm sure it's a useful scenario for whatever you happen to be indulging in, whatever industry.
Yeah.
Okay. So you had told me that you had talked with this company prior to doing work for them. You had to do a bunch of extra stuff last second, literally like day of, that put you out of your role as photographer. You were like a maintenance guy. You were a runner in the sense of having a like errand, not Aaron, Aaron, the errand boy.
Yeah.
You were wearing a lot of different hats when you weren't really expected to, and having to do a lot of stuff. And there was some disagreement over your final price. Am I correct?
Well, let me
fill in the holes.
Yeah, let me.
I have my bubbly.
Michael Bublé.
Yes, that's
Cute
right.
Michael Bublé. Here's the background. This was a very fast-paced job, and I did some no-nos, or I shouldn't say no-nos, but I feel like I made some mistakes that I shouldn't have in terms of clarifying exactly what's happening. Now, the client was new to this entire concept and hiring a photographer for certain things. And well, she saw my page and my portfolio and the way I edit and the stylings of my photos and really liked my stuff. Thank you. And that's a nice compliment. And hired me.
Can I interject throughout as well?
This job. Sure. Of course.
Just before you continue your story, listeners, don't get mad at me. You'll like this question, hopefully. How did she find your work?
You know what? I feel like through another client in the area that I've done work for before and had a nice testimony, and then looked up my website and then contacted me through my website and enjoyed the portfolio there of my stuff.
Yeah, I just asked so people can hear that funnel.
Mm-hmm.
Continue.
So we came up with a rough plan in terms of what I was trying to do. Now, mind you, it was a very short turnaround. I think that plays into it a little bit. I had 1 week before I was going out. I believe I could be wrong on that, maybe 10 days, but about a week before going out and wanting the results as soon as possible for the listing of the photos. I mean, I'm not going to, I do a lot of cabin shooting. I think this can apply to, again, any sort of product or paid job by any client. But instead of trying to hide that topic, I think it'll just be easier to say that's what it is. So getting out there, I had a goal in mind in terms of deliverables, what have you. Now, as let me just skip to the point where I feel like I was very confident with the job that I did based on my stylings and how I do photography. I went overboard on deliverables in terms of photos. In pre-meeting with my estimate, we thought we would have around 60 photos. I turned over 153, I think if we're being exact, photos, because I felt like that's what it took to do the job. Okay. So in doing that, a little bit of a risk potentially. They might have said, we didn't ask for that or we want to do this. But to me, I did the photos, I handed them in. Fine, that's one part of it. The other parts of the job were some extra stuff, as Seth alluded to, but going above and beyond for the client. Like I put together some things, some furniture. I made some stops along the way, set up a bathroom shower curtain, stopped at Walmart to get it. I did extra things to help this listing be successful. That's all fine. I'm okay doing with that. However, it did add to like the total amount of photos, like some of these extra things like, hey, I have an idea. Can you shoot this? Make sure you shoot this. Make sure you shoot this while I'm on the job, was adding to the pile of things that I was accomplishing. Again, that's all fine. At the end of the day, with all the requests, I felt like they wanted 150 photos. Essentially, like they're asking for all these things. So it added up is my point. Especially with like listing photos, and it's a bigger house, a bigger cabin. Durham Glass would be mad. I guess it's not a cabin; it's a chalet, a bigger chalet. It takes a lot of photos to. Maybe you need 5 photos for the living room alone in terms of different angles, right? And anyways, those add up. So the photos added up. In terms of, they wanted a walkthrough. I did a walkthrough with my handheld Sony with a gimbal and a wide angle lens. So I did a walkthrough, did speed ramping for that. I also gave a different angle. This was above and beyond. I used my 360, which isn't the best quality, but it does give an interesting different look. And I figured they could use that as well for maybe reels or breaking down or what have you. Breaking down into reels or social media stuff. Now they wanted social media stuff and lifestyle stuff as well. It's not just a listing thing. And that's more my bread and butter in terms of the content that I provide. So fast forward, we get home. I'm editing stuff. There are a few adjustments. They are very kind and like gracious people. They were never mean or rude or what have you. Maybe they asked a lot, what have you, but like not always nice, always very polite. So I appreciate that with them. And this is a learning experience for me and them. Anyways, I go back and forth. I'm putting together these edits, these different edits. I'm lighting stuff differently. I'm changing my editing style, which I think is going to be a topic of this whole conversation. Where does that cross the line, or what are we responsible for in that sense? So I send my invoice, which was a little bit more than the estimate, but there was a lot more deliverables. The extra deliverables, just to refresh, were about 70 extra photos and one extra walkthrough, which again, did they necessarily ask for? But I think giving them the choice was a nice thing. And I had our good friend Neutrino, Mike Neutrino, stop by and did a fly through. They knew about that. That was part of the cost, but that's his static cost. And I'm trying to think if there's anything else extra. I don't think so. I think I stopped there. I had extra stuff, and I also let them know, like, hey, you said you wanted a pan of every room. I have that. I'm not going to edit that. Let me know if you want that. Like I stopped at a certain point. So that's where we were. Now I'm doing these re-edits. They're liking the photos. They create a listing on Airbnb of my photography. It's all my photos. They arguably, this is a judgment call, but I had an intense astrophotography shot. I personally wouldn't have led with that. That was their hero shot. They were emotionally attached to me getting some astro. I did do that. I loved it, but they put it as their cover photo on Airbnb, which is a very relatively dark photo compared to everything else. I don't think it would have been my choice as a cover photo. So that's the listing photos that they put. We set up a call. We had the call today. And essentially what happened was, I checked a couple days ago as my photos. They have completely new listing photos. So they hired someone else.
What?
They hired someone else on top of it to do listing photos. And I said, I didn't even realize this happened. The last thing I saw was today that they had like a great booking for over New Year's Eve. And I was like, oh, that's great. Like they had a huge booking off of my photos. Turns out they probably weren't off of my photos. Now, the explanation was very kind. They were like, we were really looking for, and we don't know the term, but I guess what they meant was like HDR photos for their listing photos. On our call, there was a little misunderstanding where our first call, where it was like, the conversation went like, I've seen a lot on Airbnb photos using lifestyle and using a little bit more artistic stuff. We love your style. So I did listing photos, but I put my own flair to it. And I brightened some and I changed some and I added even added the Netflix thing on the TVs and did a lot of like extra photoshopping to make them, happy and did the work. Then now we're at this stage where none of my photos are being used, and they hired someone else to go in and get these listing photos on top of hiring me to get photos for their Airbnb listing. Their explanation was they just put up the site and it wasn't selling off the shelf. Basically, like it didn't have as many views. It had views in the beginning and then it didn't have as many views. And they pulled the trigger very fast and had someone else do listing. So, okay, like it literally, this is a matter of a week in the shoulder season, mind you, on a site with, I don't agree with, but like the darkest photo that I have, which is an astro photo as their header. So that's where the call was. That's where we are. Any questions to this point?
holy jeepers, eh? That's a lot of nuts.
Yeah.
Part of me thinks, I know for a fact they're not new to Airbnb. I know that from our conversation. And so part of me is thinking, well, they must know what they're doing in terms of image selection, or if something's not getting traction within the first week, something's wrong. Like they don't seem naive.
No.
Or inexperienced.
I think they're very experienced. I think this is their business, and I think they're pretty good at it. Assuming everything is face value, like they're very good at it. And I want to reiterate this conversation. I wish I recorded it to give clips of it. It was very nice and cordial. Like,
that's good. I love to hear that.
Yeah.
There's no need to get emotional. I think that's very important. There is no need for it in
Yeah.
business unless you've been I don't know how this story ends. Unless I feel like you've been absolutely wronged. Even then, there's a way to go about it.
Yeah. So again, very nice. We love your photos. We love the video that you've taken. The fly through was really cool. The walkthroughs were great. The drone stuff, unbelievable, awesome. We just had a different idea for listing stuff. And I said, okay, like, listen, your eye and my eye are different. You hired me based on my style. You did not declare you want HDR or flambient photos for your real estate listing. That's a lot of extra work. I shouldn't say maybe a lot, but it's extra work because now you're dealing with double exposures or bracketing and then working that in Lightroom, which is the cheesy way. The good way is to go into Photoshop and pick the photos in the areas that you want. It's a whole different ball game. And I was like, we didn't discuss that at all, you know? So I felt like I went in doing my thing and I gave you my best shot at it. And that's where we are. But listen, this is your business. If you don't like it and you're not going to make money off of my photos, we can have a conversation. We can have a conversation. I did the work. I did the work for you. I did it. I did what I do. I did it what I do best. I even took the extra steps to set things up and set up games and set up toys and set up spice racks and like do all this stuff to give you the best chance at having an awesome listing.
Right.
Turns out you don't love the way that the general public, I guess, responded to my photos. I have thoughts on that. And I let them know, like, I don't think putting an Astro shot as your lead photo was the best choice.
Did they say why?
They loved it. They loved it.
So you're getting into the issue of being emotionally attached to an image on a personal level.
Yeah.
Despite that not being necessarily the best, most impactful image. Especially with very artistic photos, I can find, even if it's just our own personal photo that's not for commercial use, just like, oh my, I was there. I know what I had to go through to get this. It's so unique, but it doesn't land with people who don't understand that.
Yeah. Yeah. And again, I will reiterate, this happens. This is going to happen. If you're getting into this business, there's going to be a moment where there's a hard time explaining what your client wants and you trying to interpret it, and you're going to fall short or be different than what they expected, and you're going to have this kind of conversation. They did it with absolute grace. I give them an A+ in terms of also having to tell a photographer a hard thing like, hey, good try, but for our business, we want to go with something else. Okay. That sucks to have to tell someone. And they said, we want to have a FaceTime. We want to have a Google thing. We're not going to email you this. We're not going to screw you. We want to have a conversation. And I respect the hell out of that approach. Absolutely. As an
I
artist,
think that's a good attitude.
As an artist, does it suck when someone's like, we're not going to, we had to hire someone else on top of you to make this work? Oh, freaking shoot me right now on the Google Meet. Like, let's just end it. Here, do you want my camera? Do you want to buy it? Like, I fucking quit. So kudos to them and how they dealt with it. And kudos, I think, to me and how I dealt with it. And here's where we landed is that I love this question that they asked. How'd you come about your pricing? We said we wanted to max out at, I'm making up numbers. We wanted to max out at $4,000. You charge $4,500. Why the increase? And I said, very fair. I said, listen, on the first phone call, I like to say satisfaction guaranteed. Like, if you're not satisfied, we will either fix it, like I will fix it, or I will figure out what's going on. I like people having that sort of confidence in paying a good amount of money to a photographer and getting what they want for the most part. And it doesn't have to be an all or nothing thing, but it can be sort of a like, I'm never going to use those photos. Like that.
They're not going to use any
No, no,
socials,
no, no,
nothing.
no, no, no. So wait. So what I asked was, I go, listen, on the pre-call, you said you wanted a listing job, but you also wanted social stuff. Are you planning on creating social media for your individual cabins? And then they hemmed and hawed about like, we're not sure if the ROI is worth it, like worth the effort for social media. We tend to do well based on just advertising and paying for SEO. It seems like a more bang for your buck. And I was like, okay, well, you asked me to do those. You have this opportunity to create another funnel. Let's talk if you're interested in allowing me to create your social media, even if it's for a month. I have 150 images and videos that I could crush a social media that at least people, if they're searching for a hashtag or come across it, can be funneled to your Airbnb link. As what did we talk about last time? If there's a problem, try to come up with a solution, right? So coming up with some sort of solution on how to use this work and make it not just a trashable experience and like throwing out the photos. So that was one offer that they want to think about and get back. They're like, that does sound intriguing and interesting. And I was like, I don't know if, 10 bookings from social media would excite you or it's worth. And they were like, absolutely, that would be great. Like 10 bookings is 10 bookings. So I was like, well, then it might be worth the time to set up a landing page for people to see with some of the more artistic photos that you originally really liked in my style, and use them. Now, I go to the listing they show me, and I honestly said, listen, I get this style of photography, but this is so far from what I am and what I like. This is not me. And I wish you knew or had examples of what you wanted comparatively to what you feel like you wanted actually, because this was the wrong hire. So we're explaining prices now. And where do you get prices? And I said, listen, there's a couple aspects to photography and essentially marketing for a business. There's the work. Like I gave up 2.5 days and then maybe, I don't know, an additional 10 hours of editing and doing video work and what have you. So there's the work, and then there's the return on investment in terms of you using that work and creating revenue.
Or the license, in other words.
Yeah, using the license of that work to create revenue and to make profit.
Yeah, that's so important. Before you continue, you're charging for your time and you're charging for the future gains, not just your time.
Yes.
That's a mistake I think both of us made for too long.
Yep. And you could divide all that out, or you can at least say it and couple it in. So what I said was, I made a number based on the hours spent. You can think of, in general, a day rate for a professional photographer, give or take, is $1,000. If you pay a photographer for a day rate, it's $1,000 for their time. And that doesn't usually include editing time and creating licensing agreements for those photos, depending on what you actually purchase after the fact. So to have a photographer there is one thing, but then what are you going to purchase for your use is a separate thing. And licensing is even another.
And how are you going to use it?
And how are you going to use it?
And for how long?
And for how long? Indefinitely? Are you turning over the licensing for forever use? What may it be? So
do you want to be able to use these in magazines and on blogs and in interviews and on TV and
all of that stuff. So
stuff we never used to think about.
And stuff they admittedly and again graciously were like, this is amazing to hear this from your point of view. This is kind of new to us in terms of like really hiring photographers to take a look at our properties and put their artistic, touch on things. So we appreciate you explaining it. So what I came to was, again, I might eat my lunch on this one, but it wasn't a hill I was about to die on. it was, listen, the client wanted something else. The communication maybe was not the best in terms of explaining it. And it's not my bread and butter. I'm not a real estate photographer. I don't use flash and ambient lighting to create the most balanced image. I take what lighting there is and do the best that I can with it. And if that means overexposed windows or extra shadows or contrast, whatever I feel like is the most artistic look for a photo is what I do. And if that's not what they wanted, okay, fine, fair. Let's discuss where we are. So I said, hey, my pricing came to this because I feel like I gave you 150 photos that I was proud of, that I feel like you could have used in listing and social media capacity. So I handed them over. I wanted you to see them. By no means do you have to say you wanted above that. I wanted to impress. I wanted to go above and beyond. It came easily. Your place is huge. I had a lot of photos. It took a long time, but it was an easy job based on the photogenic nature of your property. Fine, here it is. You don't have to take all those. I'm going to put a usable folder in the drive that I sent. Why don't you go through and let me know what photos you want to keep for your property? And I want you to think of a few things. Future use, like social media. You said you might be doing that. The guy has he posts a lot. So I was like, any story use that you want to use on your photos or on your personal account, any thing you want to use for your website in the future, any Airbnb listing photos you want to add that give a little bit more lifestyle or artistic view, anything that you want to potentially use and have for the future, put into this folder. I will take a look at it. I will remove the rest. I said, don't take this the wrong way, but you don't get the rest. Like, I'm taking them. I'm taking them back. Those are my photos. Okay. And then what I will do is I will price out those aspects that I talked about for the photos that you want. If it's 30 photos, I will do the time taken for them. I would no take that back, because I want to talk about that in a second. I will do the idea of licensing, what they're for. You get use of them. You're going to be making profit off of these. Hopefully, even one booking would probably pay for itself. So those aspects will be applied to the photos that you're taking. The rest, I said, with all due respect, you picked me based on my style and my portfolio. And I am proud of what I gave you. And I feel like it matches my style and my portfolio. So it still took me all that time to do that. Now, I understand you're not going to be making money off of them, which I won't charge you for. Usually marketing's 10 to 20% if you're a real business or a company. I'm not going to charge you that idea of like, well, they're going to be making thousands of dollars off of this photo. I should get a piece of that. I won't, but I will charge you for the time that it took me to create those photos. Because your choice to use them or not to use them, it'll be less money, and I will adjust the invoice based on how many photos you do want to use versus how many you don't. But I still took the time to take, I think it was 600 photos, and I edited 150 of them, something like that, maybe 500, whatever the ratio is. I still took that time to do. For everything else, I said, listen, and right now, the video too, you had me there. I will bill for my time creating it. That's what I was asked to do. And if you don't want to use it, that's up to you right now. But we can make those decisions. And then I circled back to, I promise, satisfaction guaranteed. If you don't feel like this is the best move for your business, it's your business. And I will swallow my pride and just make this work. I would just like to get paid for my time and the extra effort, because I didn't bill for like, I'm going to stop at Walmart and get the shower curtain. I'm going to put together these game toys, this in giant Jenga and giant Connect Four and cornhole and giant tic tac toe. I put together all these games to take photos of. I did I did a bunch of stuff. I mean, it was nonstop. It was hard work. I didn't bill for all of that, but I would hope you appreciate the time and the energy spent to do mostly what we said. It's just that maybe you pulled the trigger quickly because of that Astro shot. Maybe I'm giving it a scapegoat, but it just wouldn't have been my choice. And I feel like in the shoulder season of Airbnb bookings, if you gave it a minute, I feel like it would have been fine. But again, not my business. And if you don't want to utilize those things, let's make good and let's all move on. So again, they were 10 out of 10 gracious and nice and understanding in having the conversation and mature enough to have a face to face as much as we could. I do appreciate that. As nerve wracking as that can be for both parties, I think we were all very kind and just wanted to come to an understanding and agreement and sort of be like, it was kind of like a first date that like we had great intentions, but we're like, listen, it's not for me. You're really nice, but it's not. I don't see us working out. And the other person kind of being like, okay, I see what you're saying. Like, I wish you the best. It was one of those combos.
Right. Right.
Yeah.
Well, I have a list of questions. First of all, I'll say that I have a lot of respect for you coming on a platform where, there's a lot of people who listen and essentially explaining a degree of failure.
Yeah. Eat my lunch.
As someone who's been doing this for as long as you have, half a decade, maybe a little more.
Yeah.
Lost track of time, but I have a lot of respect for you. And
thank you.
Especially in a day and age where we're showing how awesome we are all the time. And I know listeners, people who are listening will be like, nodding their head, like, that's pretty cool. Because that's an ego punch. And that leads into my next question is, how are you feeling? Essentially being told that in our eyes, these weren't very good, or they weren't up to our standards. How are you feeling? How do you feel?
At first with the call, I called a good friend and kind of explained it. And she was like, you're acting really calm and cool. Like I would have been upset. And she's like, good for you. And I was at first. I told you the other day, I'm like, I'm tired right now.
Yeah.
And I think I was just part of it is like, I don't have a lot of fight in this. Like, this is their business. It sucks. It sucks that you like a couple of things. One, you didn't come back to me and be like, hey, this is the idea that I like. Can we fix this? If you're going to pay for someone else to come in and do it, it's kind of like, oh, you really didn't like it. And you feel like I can't even be capable of doing HDR shooting, which
it's a speed thing. I think you're making an assumption that could be correct or incorrect. Maybe it's just a speed thing.
It could be. It could be. Yeah, it definitely.
Right, if you have the funds, rather than repairing a car, just go buy a new one quickly if you need it.
Sure. Yeah, absolutely, and that's probably the case. But nonetheless, it's like, I think the confusion. I think where I kick myself. We talk about accountability is like, I get away from the contract and just make verbal contracts and like email contracts, which haven't really done me wrong, but there are a few instances where it's like, I wish we had it really clear and mapped out. So maybe not even the contract, maybe the communication part where it's like, yo, what do you want? What do you really want? Like, show me what you want. Describe it, because I can't just trust that someone that's never done this before can describe what HDR is or flambient photography is and what they're really looking for in listing photos. Those weren't the examples they showed me. They showed me people that they liked and they looked up to, including my own style. And I was like, oh, I got this. And I did it. Turns out they want something different at the end. That's the only part that's like, well, the assignment wasn't great. The syllabus wasn't great, and I'm getting penalized for that. That's the only part. But at the end of the day, it's their thing. It really is. It's their thing. And so to answer your question, the ego part, yeah. At first, I was cool. About an hour later or right before doing this, I wrote that same friend and I went, the depression setting in. Because it, listen, I was like playing guitar. I went for a long walk, but I started
Sat by the beach, skipped some stones,
crying into a pint of Ben and Jerry's. But
I was about to have a sip, but I had to stop for fear of spitting it out because I don't know what you're going to say next.
Honestly, I mean, people can relate, and I will be dead honest. I was like, dude, like this has happened to me a handful of times. This has happened to me a handful of times. And of late, a couple of times where the negative jobs hurt 10 times more than the good jobs feel good.
Of course, negativity bias. It's bred into our human nature.
Of course. So I realized that and I noticed that, but there was part of me. I've had these thoughts. I had these intrusive thoughts in the last hour of like, why do I do this? Why am I even doing this? Like, people don't like it. It's not fun. It's not fun when they don't like it. It's not like, those are the thoughts that I have in those moments.
Mm-hmm.
And they're fleeting and I can work through them, but I'm not immune. And I'm sure people out there are like, oh, God damn, like I understand what you're saying because there's nothing worse than doing it. And you question your ability. You question like, should have I known that they wanted flamboyant lighting for this listing shoot automatically? And you reach out and you ask people and you just kind of do some research. I mean, I was YouTubing HDR versus hand HDR versus Lightroom, merging HDR versus flamboyant lighting. Like, what is the protocol? What is the difference? What do people go to? Like, so I'm learning from it.
That's what I was going to say. So good. There is good in this. Like it's, there's a spark there to learn what they were desiring, which may serve you well in the future. Pain can potentially add a skill.
Oh yeah, it will. Even if the skill is, hey, you want listing photos? Do you know what HDR is? What do you prefer?
Is that what you're looking for? Right.
Yes.
But you don't know what you don't like. You don't know to ask that question without this
moment,
without this scenario. And the other thing I was going to ask. So if we're looking in the accountability mirror here, because that's part of the theme of our show, where we try to take extreme ownership, right?
Yeah.
We don't do victim mentality. We try not to, blame. So where's the breakdown? Is it a matter of you don't know what you don't know, or did you not dig deep enough with questions? Where's the breakdown in your opinion for people listening?
Both, I suppose. Listen, I've done a lot of cabin shoots, a lot of Airbnb shoots. I can't say that anyone's ever said, I need listing photos and social media. Usually it's lifestyle and social media and artistic, pretty photos. So for me to go into that, and I believe in saying like, hell yeah, I can do that and figuring it out.
Mm-hmm.
I think I assumed too much that listing photos are listing photos. Like, how hard could it be? You take a picture of a room. And if you're not prepared and you don't expose correctly, you don't even have the option to HDR things, So it's like.
So is that a bit of like overconfidence? Like, yeah, I got this.
Maybe it cost me or not hedging my bets in terms of like, even if I underexposed one photo and overexposed photo and I could combine the two, I think I could have been fine. And
you got it stacked, right?
Yeah. And then they say like, hey, we like this style. And I'm like, okay, I can re-edit these and charge for my time or whatever. Cause like you didn't say these, but I got you,
Right, which is more work on top of the already additional work you were doing. Right. Mm-hmm.
I also could, a couple of notes to go ahead is I busted through. There was a time essence here, like get these done as fast as possible. My first batch was 70 photos on Saturday night of a weekend shoot. So let's say that again. I'm there Friday, Saturday, Sunday. My first batch of completed photos was 70 photos Saturday night.
That was going to be my other question, because I was going to suggest, well, you could probably mitigate some of this if you're firing
Yes.
off things in real time.
And or
Sounds like you checked off that box.
well, I could have said, here's 10. Do you like this style?
Am I going in the right direction? Right.
Yeah. Instead of doing all 70 and then redoing all 70. So lesson learned. In this specific case, now I know what like I know what that was before, but in terms of like preferences, hey, you say you like my style. I effing hate HDR. I would never do it. Is that something you like? Because
or what part of my style do you love specifically?
Sure, but just like watching out for that sort of trap. Not that it was on purpose trap, but a trap in terms of my style versus what someone might potentially want for an industry standard, right? Like, okay, if you go to real estate photos, they're HDR of some sort. So, okay, that's the standard. Now I know. Now this like came back to bite me. Now going forward, if someone says I need listing photos for like the first listing of my property, I can say like, hey, do you really like my style for those listing photos? Because you're hiring me. I don't have any of that on my profile. That's not my thing. I can do it, but do you want it in my way or other people's way? Which leads me to an ultimate question for you and everyone out there. Where is the line between, I've heard some people put this in their contract of like, you're hiring me for my editing style. My artistic style will not be adjusted. And in sticking to that versus I'm going to edit in the way that you like, even if it's like really difficult to do because you don't like it. Like, I guess you could put those jobs
I hear
away.
what you're saying. I hear what you're saying. It's if I'm you and I'm hearing from my prospect that they love my style, I'm going to continue doing what I've always done. So that's
Right.
kind of why I asked you. You don't know what you don't know. Meaning,
Yeah.
you can't ask questions for. You can't ask an infinite amount of questions to cover every single potential
Correct.
want and desire. So I'm trying to like do an after action report here, trying to figure out where it really went wrong, because you wouldn't know to ask the questions we're talking about in hindsight because you were told that your style was loved.
Yeah.
So I think, to me, they must be, I think you said this, they must be new at this. And I think there is a tendency, we see this all the time, where, you know, our family, our friends are like, oh, you take really good pictures. Can you do this wedding? And you're like, whoa. Yeah, I'm good with my camera in certain scenarios, right?
Yeah.
I'm not a
Right.
wedding photographer. I think there's this perception that if you're really good with a camera in your specified field, you're good in general. And you can fulfill my vision. I think it's our duty to let prospects and clients know, if they're new or inexperienced, that just because I'm skilled at what I do, very specifically, that I'm not good at everything. That's on
Right.
us, I believe. And I think that's a
Yeah.
conversation you have if you know your client is new to this.
Yeah. And I think people the general public, the layperson, underestimates the power of editing and style and dedication to that part of it, and overestimates you have a nice camera and you have a good eye and you can take a picture. Because
Yes.
you give anyone with a decent eye a really nice camera that knows how to use it, they can capture a decent photo in the raw. It's a lot has to do with the style afterwards, right? So it's like that's what I think differentiates all of us. Like you were just with Ian. Ian has a very distinct style. You have a distinct style. I have a distinct style. Anyone that we look up to has a distinct style. And but we all have similar cameras.
Mm-hmm.
You know, so it's like I think people underestimate the editing part and also see most of our best work. Like we are presenting photos that we really like in our eye, which means they're composition wise pleasing. We like how the edit turned out. We like how the colors turned out. We like how it all meshed together. We like the lighting, and we present that photo. I just edited a bear and cub photo and it was a little busy. It's awesome, but I was like, I don't really like it. And I'm not showing it to anyone. Like I'm not posting it. I edit it, I'll keep it, but I'm not posting it because it's not one of what I feel like is my best. So if you see a highlight reel like Instagram is, or a portfolio is of your best moments, and then you get 150 photos of the same house, it's going to be underwhelming. I think that's a part of it too, where it's like, oh, that's not what I was hoping for. I was hoping for 150 absolute bangers of
Well, we've
our
talked about this,
place.
that sometimes the quantity of deliverables dilutes the quality just
Yeah.
naturally.
Yeah.
Like often a 20 photograph portfolio has such more impact when you
Yeah.
pick the 20 of the best 200 as opposed to handing in all 200.
I agree. And the two times I'm thinking of where I was like having to explain myself, that was the scenario. So maybe lesson learned that like over
Yeah.
delivering is not the way to go. You know?
Well,
So
I don't want to scare people from over delivering, because going a little bit above what was expected is
yeah.
that's a nice receivable,
Yeah.
you
You know
know,
what I mean though, but a lot over.
yeah, yeah, a lot over, I think, especially if over delivering is literally quantity, you can
Right.
dilute the impact of your portfolio
Well, even
for sure.
over delivering in terms of like listing photos is like, you know, here's a photo of your makeup towels in the bathroom.
Right.
It's a fine photo, but how impactful can that be? Next to like, so you have one astro shot that's amazing, and then a makeup photo, and then here's the mirror, here's the plant on the table. Like those might be usable, but you're going through them, and I can't help to think like, oh, this is a lot of crap versus like comparatively, you know, in proximity
Yeah.
to some of your masterpieces, we'll call them. It's just like, oh, anyone could have taken that. Anyone could have
Right. Like
taken
what
that. Anyone
happened
could
on
have
this
taken that.
one? Yeah.
Yeah. But even though it's like, it is useful potentially. So it's like, one time I did this, and just a little tip. If you feel like they're worthwhile photos, I separated them from my what was delivered. Like my here are my favorites, here are extras, and like separated them out so it's more impactful in terms of looking like,
Right.
oh, 25 really good awesome lifestyle photos. Oh, here's a few photos of the makeup towel. Maybe if I do a post about the bathroom, we'll throw that in there, you know, like whatever. But it's not something I'm like, this counts as, you know, one of the photos. I took a picture of a makeup towel, you know. So it
Yeah.
does, I think it does dilute if you go above and, I don't want to say above and beyond. If you throw in all the ones that you feel like this could be useful, this could be useful, this could be useful, maybe keep those separated and explain it out. Like, hey, I have a folder of B-roll. Do you want these
Yeah.
photos too? You know?
Yeah. I think I was just with Ian, and he calls those throwaways.
Yeah.
I was with Ian Jones in Pittsburgh, and we're going to do an episode on that, or have him on, because it's not the first time we've hung out, but the first I drove down to see him, and we spent the whole weekend shooting. I learned so much.
Mm-hmm.
By the end, I was editing like him, which was kind of odd. So he calls these. We were out in Pittsburgh, and we were doing a Tamron takeover. So we just went down to the city and we just literally shot everything. And I wore my nice, like, neon colored Hoka running shoes.
Mm-hmm.
And people know I love running. I don't really have any athletic shots of myself. So we brought the shoes as kind of a prop and I was wearing them. And we found these cool patch of sand underneath one of the bridges in Pittsburgh. I didn't know there's like 413 bridges in Pittsburgh. I learned this. And a lot of them are just in tight, kind of like sand blowing up from me pushing off. And by themselves, they're kind of garbage, right? Ian calls them, these are throwaway shots. But then when they get put into a story, an Instagram story, kind of, you know how you can stack images or collage them?
Yeah.
With the banging photos, like the bangers, it supplements the whole piece or the whole story. It's when that throwaway is standing by itself, you're like, what is this?
Yeah.
It's the glue. I feel like if you can creatively use those, I'm calling them throwaways, but they're throwaways on their own. If you can use those images to kind of keep the whole progression of your shoot together, that's the way to go. I don't think throwing them individually in a Google Drive folder is the way to do that, especially if you have like 150 photos.
Yeah, that's a good point. And putting together those layout, like sort of, what's it called? Like the layout guide, you know, like the in thirds, like put together a narrative with those photos so they can use it. They don't have to think and they don't look at it like, okay, I'm not going to use this. Why am I?
For example, let's say makeup towel, right?
Uh-huh.
Let's say you have wide angle of a beautiful bathroom, master bathroom. And then the middle shot is the makeup towel. And then the third shot in the collage is a lifestyle model applying makeup or lipstick or whatever.
Right.
Now just the towels on its own makes sense with context. I think context is the key word here.
Yeah.
On its own, terrible. As a supplemental piece, it's tasteful.
Yeah, really nice point. I agree. And
the other thing I'll say too, I'm reading. Do I have it by me? I had a book somewhere. I don't know where it is right now. I'm rereading the Can't Hurt Me book by David Goggins. I think it's my third time. And I was reading this chapter today and it's applicable to you. It says you have to show up and be your best on days when you feel your worst. I'm not saying you feel your worst today. That's pretty crappy to have that call, right? Like you were saying, you're doubting yourself. You know, I can't imagine you feel good after that. And here you are showing up for duty because you know that you have a responsibility to me and to the podcast and all those things. I just want to say that.
Thank you. But yeah, that's a no-brainer. I think if anything, like you mentioned before too, sharing it, like, listen, again, ego-wise, people make mistakes. And this show is about talking about that stuff because you're probably going to be there at some point where some client or some bride or husband or groom doesn't like your material or has questions or isn't happy or wants a refund. Like, how have you prepped for that moment? Do you have a policy? Do you have the ability to have a conversation and stay calm and not take it really personally? One thing I did do during this call that I'm proud of is, as much as like it hurts and it stings, I really didn't take it personally because it was a weird sort of, we love your style. That's why we hired you, but we need these for our listing stuff. And I was like, okay, this isn't about me necessarily. It's about the mess up of the communication or the conversation to get this going or understanding each other in terms of a new business and a new property and what was really needed. I'm not going to take this personally. I'm going to work with them. They are still the client. There may be future work. There may be an opportunity for them to recommend me. Someone might reach out and say, how'd your experience go with Aaron? And I want them to say, like, we missed the mark a little bit, but he was awesome.
Yeah, I was just going to say that's very important to not to not tilt the table and flip out, because you can still have a great relationship with these people. Aaron was responsive. He was professional. He found solutions for us with the images we did like. Even though we didn't really go with him for our listing photos, we have nothing but good things to say, and he's good at his style of work. It would be so easy to get charged. And so my question to you is, how can people work on not taking things personally or getting emotional? I mean, you need to get emotional to, you don't need to, but you get emotional to an extent after a call like that. We're not robots, right?
Yeah.
But
yeah.
how can people practice that, in your opinion?
I go back to the book, The Four Agreements. Like, never take anything personally. The way everyone sees the world is through their own lens and their own dream, is something like the quote. Like, it's how they perceive it. So it's not really about you. It's what they decided that they need for their life, their business. And you might be great for 1,000 other people, but not for them. So it's not about your work. Like I said, I was proud of what I delivered. I was proud of the effort that I put into. There was no doubt. I didn't hand that over going, oh, I really mailed this one in. Did 80 extra photos and extra video and have extra to go. Like, I did not mail this in. I knew from the start, like, I'm working hard and I want to do a bang up job. It's like, I got up to plate and I was like, I am confident. I want to do the best that I can to hit this home run. And I hit a fly ball. All right. That sucks. Doesn't mean I suck at baseball. Doesn't mean I suck at photography. I just have to listen and think. I have to zoom way out really fast. That's a great way to do it. Zoom way out really fast and be like, okay, we are in triage mode. How do I save, instead of worrying about the extra, money that I was supposed to get or I expected to get because of my work? How do I triage not losing a future job? How do I triage potentially creating lemonade out of lemons with, hey, are you ever going to do social media? Come to me, because now I have 150 photos and video. I could do your social media for 3 years straight. For a reasonable price. It'd be pretty easy to just bust out content that now you have a page. Okay, I'm immediately triaging to put that work to use and maybe get more money from it potentially. I am also zooming out and saying, what if someone contacts them? How do I want them to explain this situation? And I want them to be like, he was gracious and kind and didn't freak out. He adjusted the invoice based on what we needed, what we talked about. We missed the mark. It was partly our fault for maybe our description. Like, maybe they just are easy on me with someone that asks, and I still get that recommendation based on my portfolio and my behavior with a client that is now a testimonial for everything else but photography. My character, my honesty, my communication, my kindness, my temper, my emotion, my reason, whatever that may be. I'm giving myself a lot of compliments here, but I think I'm just saying this in general in terms of, like, how do we get through these situations without screwing ourselves? Because what's the alternate option? Freaking out, calling them names, demanding money, saying you're going to get litigation, bringing up emails, quoting. Like, that's a lot of work also for not a ton of money, and then potentially losing much more money based on testimonials or jobs or being a pain in the ass to future customers. So I think zooming out really fast and being like, okay, here we are. This is not about my photography. I've been here for 5 years. I've done many things. I just did stuff with my biggest client ever, and they were blown away and absolutely love it. So it's not me completely. I messed up on a certain thing. We missed the mark. We just missed the mark as a client worker relationship. How do we get through this and come to a peaceful agreement? And that's what you do. As simple as pie.
Yeah. Those things you were all labeling off too, those are all things that are well within your control.
Yeah, very much so.
Which is soothing. At least I think so. I think we talked about this in either 2 episodes ago or the last one. just when you know you can control, you can make a decision, there's a factor that you can control. It's very soothing because you know you have the ability to do something about it, right? So
Yeah.
I like that very much. And I think as well, it's very rare where one party is going, we're going to screw Mr. Mantis. He's going to do all these photos and we're going to get them for free. It's very rare. Most of the time, things are misunderstandings.
Yeah. And I will say it, I think for the third or fourth time, the way they approached it in a hard situation for them to tell a photographer that they were supposed to, are going to pay for, or were supposed to pay for, or need adjustment, like, hey, we had to go a different route. Like, dude, that sucks for them too. And they did it gracefully and politely and calmly. There was no sort of screw, like you said, no sort of screw you. It's not about that. It's like making the best decision for someone's business, just like you would for like your own family. Sometimes you're going to make a decision that's hard on someone else because that's what you need to do, and it sucks. But if they take it well, you can have a combo and move on. I think my favorite quote ever is Viktor Frankl, who says, between a stimulus and a response, there's a space. And in that space is the power to choose. Now, for people, that space you might need that space for 2 days to cool down and then respond. And sometimes it's good to take a walk. Sometimes it's good for them to say, hey, we want to schedule a call, and me to be able to stew on it for a couple of days and be like, what could they want? They could want to tell me that they loved it and they want to book another thing. They could tell me there's an issue with some photos. They could tell me that they don't agree on the price. I could think through a lot of scenarios and calm down in that. So the stimulus was they need to talk to me. The response was us having the call, but in between was the moment to pause and think and respond and react normally and calmly and just with intelligence versus emotion. And then furthermore, on the call, them saying what it actually is, there's a moment there to take a deep breath and just have a conversation and understand each other really well and explain your side of things without being defensive so they understand and hear them. I love imago therapy where you kind of repeat what the other person's saying. So they explain their complaints and their critique. And I said, I want to make sure I'm understanding you correct. What you were looking for was more of that sort of HDR look where you can see outside and inside's more balanced. Am I hearing you correctly?
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
You're showing them that you're listening and you're hearing them and you're hearing the issue, and you're not saying, well, you didn't tell me that. You're not getting defensive. That also creates that space for you to kind of hear them without getting defensive and take it all in. And then you can respond when it's your turn and declare your needs, declare your thoughts, declare your defenses if you feel like you need to. Sometimes you do, but have a conversation and stay calm about it. So those are my thoughts on getting freaking lit up this afternoon.
Very good dissection. I was looking for the word.
Yeah.
Very good dissection. Real world, almost real time photography, client communication scenario. So again, it was an Airbnb, cabin, chalet, whatever you want to call it, that industry of photography, regardless of what your niche is, these concepts are relevant. I'm saying that a lot recently just because I don't want people to be very narrow-minded and not see the macro principles, concepts, and things that can be applied. So I'm sure you're tired of me saying it by now. People are in their car nodding, yes.
Yes. Yeah.
But just keep that in mind. I mean, that's the attitude I go with into everything. Reading books and listening to other podcasts, I'm like, ooh, I'll take that and apply it here. Or, oh, I can spin that to my life.
Yeah.
Right. So just something to think about. And again, I appreciate you coming on and being honest, pretty vulnerable about, I wouldn't say underperforming is the wrong word, but not getting the outcome that you desired. or that would be a highlight, right? It's tough to share that stuff. And it goes to ties in beautifully with our last 2 episodes where we routinely hammered home being brutally honest. This is, again, you're being brutally honest with me. You're being brutally honest with yourself, with listeners, where things went well, where things went wrong. The other party in this scenario was brutally honest with you, saying, let's have a meeting. Hey, we didn't like it. Here's why. That serves you because you go back in and you're learning about HDR now. And okay, maybe I know what questions to ask in the future. He could have just, blown you off or paid you and sent you on your way, which would have been great, but you wouldn't have learned anything. So again, being brutally honest wins the day as always.
Yeah, for sure. And I think one more thought or tip is don't count your chickens before your eggs hatch. It's easy to get ahead of yourself with like, oh, this invoice, I'm going to get this into my bank account and I'm going to have this much money. And, like that leads to, I think, more letdown too, because it's like, no, the job's not done until it's done, until the money's in your bank. You have to be working for that invoice. Like there's no guarantee there's not going to be problems. Seth, you've been through it. I've been through it where it's like, it's just a bad feeling if it's not settled. So I think, not counting that money before it's really deposited can just save you a little bit of, I don't know, anxiety or letdown when and if things go south. Because again, the friend that I called, she said, like, imagine, like, again, this isn't my full-time thing, but imagine full-time and like you're counting on this money. It'd be so stressful if someone came back and was like, I'm going to give you half as much as you were counting on. Like that is a different ball game. And I think it's just important to have that sort of insurance policy in your mind of like, I need to make sure as much as I can that I'm on the best communication page as possible with my clients, write everything down, be really organized, take the extra minutes and extra time to ask the questions if you're not sure about anything. More questions is better than not enough and then figuring out later.
Right. You went and bought meme coins with your expected earnings, didn't you? Crypto coins.
So many meme coins. I'm in financial ruin.
This is intervention. Stop buying meme coins, Aaron.
Dogecoin.
He doesn't actually. I'm just being silly.
I'm kidding.
Till next time, if you like this episode, cost-free, effective way to support the show, leave a rating review on Apple Podcasts and Spotify. It really does help us out a lot. We'll continue to do these for free as always, and hope you're getting nuggets of knowledge from these conversations. And if you want to watch us, you want to see us, head over to YouTube, subscribe to the YouTube channel. It's a humble page right now, but it's fun.
You can also leave a donation and help my bank account after this giant loss.
Help Aaron buy more Dogecoin.
Yeah, please. Because I was really counting on this invoice and now I am financially ruined.
Oh, he kids. Donations go to just supporting the costs of the show, hosting, all that stuff.
All donations go to Aaron's bank account.
Like one of the medicines you see on TV. It's like side effects may include cancer, diabetes, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah. Yep.
All right, buddy.
All right, man.
Till next time. See ya.